Namaste. We will start now. Today's lesson will be a bit different from the way we planned it because sure, we will speak a bit about Prakasa and Vimarsha, the light and the self-awareness, but the main part will be about the levels of the word, and then the practical part, which will be using a mantra, recognizing all these levels of the word. So let's begin with what is Prakasha and Vimarsha and why are they important in Shaivism philosophy, and they are mentioned a lot by Abhinavagupta, Kshamaraja and others authors about the Shaiva philosophy, the non-dual Kashmir Shaivism. First of all, the word Prakasha means light. But in this context, in this situation, it's about the light of consciousness. In yogi philosophy and in Shaiva philosophy, all things are made of light, of this light of consciousness. And it's a beautiful image to think about. Sure, we know from science that all is energy, and light is a form of energy, and in this way we can understand that sure, everything is light, but it's not just the physical light, it's about this consciousness. Consciousness is self-luminous, so it doesn't need anything to bring a light to it, because consciousness is the light itself. Usually in our material world, if we want to see something, that something has to be illuminated. Some light had to be shown about that object so that we can see it. And using this metaphor and this image, they thought about this Prakasha as being the light that is necessary for us to be aware of anything. So even if we don't see things, we need this light of consciousness to be aware of things. So in this regard, Prakasha, this light, is the conscious itself. It's even named Shiva. So this light of consciousness is actually Shiva. And for sure, it's not just, and we already know in Tantrism, it's not just Shiva alone. He's always with Shakti, and Shakti is called in this context, in this metaphor, it's called vimarsa. Vimarsha meaning this quality of this light to be self-aware. So it's not just any light, but it's a self-aware light. In other philosophies, they use this idea that everything is light, but this light of consciousness is somehow just that, without this active power of Shakti. So in this perspective, Shaivists say that if you just have light, that light is inert, it's not moving. It needs this self-awareness, this energy, this Shakti to create. And the usual metaphor that they use to describe this light of consciousness is that of a mirror. But a mirror that has nothing to reflect in it, but in that mirror is a reflection of the world without an object that is actually reflected. So in the same way in which the mirror is not affected by what is reflected in it, so if it's the sun, the mirror doesn't remain sunny, and if it's a dark place, the mirror don't remain darker. So this light of consciousness, this prakasha, even if take all the forms of what we perceive and we are aware of, it's not affected by this, remains in that purity of self-luminous light, self-luminous consciousness. And the creative awareness of its own being, like I said, it's called vimarsa. Prakasha being the eternal, unchanging consciousness, and vimarsa being this self-awareness of that consciousness. And sure, what we need to understand from this image of Prakasha and Vimarsha, they form a unity, like Shiva and Shakti are always together. This Prakasha, this light of consciousness and self-awareness of this consciousness are always together. They are not separated. And they are like the medium, the place from which all things appear. Sure, from the personal point of view, everything is about our awareness of, it's about our consciousness. Even if we think that we see the things with our eyes and touch the things with our hands, what we actually perceive, it's an image, a mental construct made by our minds, by our brains, that using the information that it's brought by the senses creates this inner image from the light of consciousness. Sure, this is the individual part, this is the personal part, is the way in which we recreate the world in our minds. What we perceive, what we think we understand about the external world is actually just an image created by our mind and our consciousness. So for this reason, our experience is just made by this light of consciousness, is not something external or outside of us. It's hard to understand this because we are so used to get out of ourselves and identify with what we experience that we are no longer aware of this inner world, of this inner creation that our mind and consciousness realize inside of us. But in meditation and being more aware, we start to understand this world of consciousness that it's inside of us. And it's important to make this distinction because almost always this creation is not identical with the objective world. In this process of manifesting the image of the world, our brain uses experiences, past experiences, biases, tendencies, preferences, all these kind of things that make us to have this kind of inner image that is slightly or sometimes even very different from the external world. But the external world for sure has its existence because it's created by the light of Shiva, of supreme consciousness. So all the things that exist there are this creation from the light of consciousness, of Shiva's consciousness, and they have this essence which is consciousness and self-awareness. And it's a beautiful image, and this kind of meditation, it's done in Vijnana Bhairava, where they have these methods in which they say contemplate your whole body and the whole world as being nothing but consciousness. And again they get back to this idea that everything is consciousness. And sure, we can understand, like I said in the beginning, that the substrate, the things that it's the essence of all that exists, it's this light and energy, Shiva and Shakti. And sure, this is the idea in what Prakasa and vimarsa means. Prakasa meaning, again, the pure light, and vimarsa, the self-awareness of this light of consciousness. And they are together, Shiva and Shakti. Moving on to the levels of the word, it's like a theory of speech. And it has a connection with this Prakasa and vimarsa, like you will see further. So this philosophy of speech, it's old one in Hindu philosophy, because is this idea that uttering a thing manifests that thing. So when you name something, you create that something, even if it's just in the mind of the one who listened to you. So when I say apple, your mind will create an apple using this power of the word. So it's a old theory. Even God is seen as Shabda Brahman, the God as word, as sound. And the first time in which these levels of the word appear, it's in a work by Bhartrihari called Vakyapadya, which actually it's about grammar and the way in which words are created and connected to create sentences and stories and all the things that we use the words for. And for this reason, this school of philosophy was called the grammarian school, the ones that used grammar for understanding the world around. And they first formulated these three levels of speech that we will speak about further. And the non-dualistic Kashmir Shaivism took these 3 levels but added one more. And this one more level, it's called Paravak, the supreme word. So these 3 levels are like the supreme word, then the visionary called Pashyanti, then the intermediate, the middle one, Madhyama, and then the embodied one, corporeal one, called Vaikari. So if, very simplistically speaking, want to understand this very fast, first there is a level in which all the words and sounds and letters are together, and it's like the origin of all things, and this is Paravak, the supreme word. Then we have the intention to speak something, to create, to utter something. But it's just the intention. We don't know yet how we will speak it, what words we will use, how we will combine those words in sentences. We just have the vision. For this reason it's called Pashyanti, which means visionary. So we just have this vision that we will or we want to speak something. Then in the middle level, this vision starts to become more manifest, and it's more clear what we want to speak or what we want to communicate, and appear different words, different possibilities to say those words, to connect those words in sentences and such. But nothing happened. We didn't open our mouth to speak the words. For this reason it's called the middle level, because it's in the middle. It's not subtle, because words start to appear beside the intention, but it's not yet spoken, so everything is still possible. And then the words become manifest. They have a body when we actually speak them. And when we open our mouth, then the words are exiting and they are embodied. We cannot change it once we utter them. They are just in that way. Sure, we can create another sentence or speak another word, but those that all are already spoken are already spoken. So very fast and very simple, this is the process in which the speech or the words are manifested. Sure, in philosophy it's important to understand this, and in yoga and in meditation it's important to understand this kind of process in which our intention becomes thoughts and then words, this kind of manifestation, because the process in meditation is in reverse. We have the manifest thing, then we want to get in our mind, becoming aware of this content of our minds, then to that more subtle level of the vision in which we don't use words or thoughts, and then in Paravak, which is actually the God level, the level of consciousness. Because this Paravak, it's actually Prakasa, is that light of consciousness. it's the primordial, the uncreated word. Is the very essence of the highest reality. It's ever present and all pervading. It's in all things. And in this explanation, what it's important to understand is that this paravak, this supreme word, which is this prakasha, this light of consciousness, it's present in every word we utter, we speak. Even if we are not aware of this, we are not aware of the power of speech, we are not aware of the power of the words to create in our minds realities and experiences. Usually I just spoke. It's not a problem if I use bad words or ugly words. Not a problem. But those words create realities in the minds of those who listen to us. And even if is nobody listening to us, we are alone and just I don't know, swear about something, that creates in our mind that ugly reality. So from this point of view, sure, we have to be more responsible with how we use the words. But from the point of view of this higher reality, all the words have in them this light of consciousness. We just have to become more aware or more conscious about this. And sure, this paravak, it's, like I said, identical with the pure consciousness, with Chit. And for this reason, this domain, this realm of paravak, it's like a place, if we want to name it like this. It's like a inner place of light and actual a vibrating light. You maybe are aware of the way Ramana spoke about this light of consciousness, and he used the term spurata, which means this vibrating light. It's not a light that it's cold and static and not moving, but it's a vibrating light which creates something similar to spanda. So it's not just the vibration of the pure consciousness, but it's that of the whole cosmic manifestation shining in this paravak in an undifferentiated way. So in this realm of the Supreme Word, everything is like a seed that can become something, but for the moment is just a seed. Everything is there, but not yet manifested. All energies or things or possibilities are there. So this paravak contains, in the state of this primordial undifferentiation, yes, someone asked if I can speak a little bit more about this power of the words. And I will speak about them in a bit when we get to the practice, because the practice will be about this power of the words, and you will be about using a mantra to get from the Vaikari, from this corporeal world, to the paravak, to the supreme consciousness. because the traditional use of the mantras, it's about this. Sure, in folk tradition, they use the mantras for all kind of purposes, but from the point of view of Shaivism, the use of mantra is to get back to the unmanifested realm of God. So I forgot to get you the way that Prakasa and vimarsa are spelled. So you can see now Prakasa is this pure luminous consciousness, light, Shiva, and vimarsa is the self-awareness of the light of consciousness, which is Shakti. And then you have here the levels of the word that we speak now. So we will speak a bit more about the power of the words and the way in which we can use it to gain a more deep awareness when we will get to the practice, in which we actually we will use a mantra to get all these kind of levels, to understand all these kind of levels. And I think that will answer to your question. So Abhinavagupta says about Paravak that she is actually present at the levels of Pashyanti and so forth, so all the levels of the world, because without her, darkness and therefore unconsciousness would prevail. So the fact that we can understand words and thoughts, it's because of this light of consciousness that is present in Paravak. Without it, we cannot understand words. We cannot understand communication, and our mind cannot create the inner world, inner realm using these words. So for this reason, again, Paravak is identified with the Supreme Consciousness in Trika, in Kashmir Shaivism, in non-dual Kashmir Shaivism. And this Supreme Consciousness is called actually Prakasha Vimarsha Maya, which is this combination of light and awareness, self-awareness, that creates all the world. This illusion of differentiation, which appears that it's different kinds of light, but it's the same consciousness. So it's both undifferentiated light and pure consciousness, or pure consciousness, Prakasha, and awareness or realization of this pure light, which is vimarsha. So these two aspects cannot be separated, and they are present in this Paravak, in this supreme level of the word. And sure, we can ask ourselves, we speak of words, but at this level, we don't have actual words. It's just like we have the potentiality of words to appear, but the words as we understand them in this external world don't appear yet at this level. It's like we have all the possibilities, all the combinations of all letters, but they are pure potentiality. They are not manifested yet. So we don't have yet the actual word that we usually understand. So for our mind, it's a bit confusing, speaking of this supreme word in which there aren't actual words that we can understand with our minds, but sure enough, they call this reality the supreme word, because again, from this all the words can appear. This, again, this light of consciousness and self-awareness of this light. Then we have the next level, which, like I said before, is called Pashyanti, visionary, because at this level we have this kind of vision, of idea, of intention that we want to speak something. Speak something in this regard is not only to actually speak, it's seen as a more complex thing about creating, because for an artist, for a pen, for someone who paints, for a painter, the Pashyanti is the intention to create an image. So he he has this kind of intention. I want to paint something. It's not clear yet. It will be a landscape, it will be a portrait, or still nature or something. He just have this intention to create. So Pashyanti is this stage of intention to create. It's like a vision, but a vision that is not yet, again, is not yet clear. It's just this pure intention. And sure, Pashyanti is considered the first stage of speech, the proper first stage. Paravak is like the medium, the soil, the ground from which all the words can appear, but the first stage is this intention to create something, to create a word, to create a sentence, or to create a symphony or a painter or a work of art or something. So for this reason, again, it's called the visionary. Pashyanti meaning this kind of capacity to have a mental, or not a mental, but a vision. And sure, from this perspective, from this point of view, Pashyanti is the highest level of speech, of actual speech, even if we have this Paravak, which is actual consciousness and self-awareness. Why it's important all the time that we actually want to utter or speak something? First, we have this intention, we have this desire. Even if we are not aware of it. Sure, as we practice and use our awareness more, we start to be more present for this intention. And especially in the retreats, the way in which we do these Hridaya retreats, because of the mauna of the silence, we tried not to get to vicary, to the corporeal, to the manifested speech, even if in our mind there are a lot of words. Those are still in Madhyama, in the middle. But what is interesting after a long period of mauna, of silence, is that we become more aware of this moment in which the intention to speak something appear. And for this reason, we are more aware of what we will speak, the way in which we will use the words. We will be more aware and conscious about this energy that we use when we speak. And for this reason, it's important from time to time to keep this mauna, to get back to this level of pasyanti, of vision, of what we will create when we will utter a word or a sentence, or we communicate something with another person. Then sure, we have this madhyama, this in between. If Pashyanti is still undifferentiated and there is just this intention to articulate something or to speak something, in Madhyama, because it's this middle ground, there is that intention, but that intention starts to have different levels of manifestation. So if we get back to our example with the painter, he starts to think, okay, I will do a landscape. So from all the possibilities that he has, he chooses or become more aware that his creative process needs to be expressed in a landscape. So in his mind appear different possibilities. I can paint a mountain, or I can paint the sea. I am more close to a forest, so maybe I will do a forest. So all these possibilities start to appear for him, but still he hasn't paint anything. So nothing is produced, but it's just in his mind that this process starts to get different results, different images. So from this point of view, in Madhyama we come out of undifferentiation, but still is not manifested yet. It's still in flux, it's still moving. And from the point of view of speech, sure, we start to have an idea of what we will want to communicate with others, and we start to have different possibilities to realize that communication, and we take in consideration how it's better to use the words to convey our meaning or our ideas, and start to think about how it's better to do it. Sure, if we are aware. If we are not aware, from Pashyanti to Vaikari, it's like a sudden process. We are not aware, we just have an intention, and the words are getting out of our mouth. For this reason, I don't know in other parts, but in Romania we say that you spoke without thinking. So without having this process of the middle of Madhyama, the intention gets directly to words, and usually this is like a reactive thing, because our mind will choose the first words that are there, and usually is not a good idea. So in this regard, we start to be more analytical and appear like a differentiation between what we will speak and what we will refer to when we speak that thing. And then sure, it's this Vaikari. Vaikari means corporeal, manifested, embodied word. So when we open our mouth and utter the word, that word cannot be changed once leaves our phonation apparatus and is manifested. And in the case of the painter that we spoke about, he starts to paint a forest. So if he starts to paint a forest, it's too late to change things to make a sea or a mountain. Sure, in the this metaphor is not very good because he can just erase what he done and start over, but then it's another process. He can do this, but he will start again, like from the, at least from the Madhyama point of view. So now, from the practical point of view, from the meditation point of view, because for sure for us is more interesting this part. It's interesting also the part in which we understand this process and we become more aware of these stages, and we understand better how the way we speak and express ourselves in words came to reality, and being more aware of this, we are more aware of this presence of consciousness and of light of consciousness in everything that we say. But again, what is important for us is this perspective in meditation, and the best example is for sure a mantra, which is all present in the yogic tradition, and it's for sure used extensively in the Shaivit part. They have for sure specific mantras for different reasons, but usually the mantras are used in Shaivism to get to that non-duality, because in Tantris mantras are used for a whole of other reasons, from, I don't know, to get rich, or to be liked by a man or a woman, or to be powerful, or to get power and such, to short to moksha, to liberation. In Shaivism they use only for moksha, because they consider that moksha will bring with it boga, the pleasure of experiencing the world. So it's not necessary to make an effort just for these trivial things. So why the mantra? It's a good example. Sure, the word mantra means an instrument of the mind, mantra. But why it's so used? First of all, it's a word of power. It contains an energy. From the Shaivit perspective, all words are words of power. So it's good to understand this from the beginning. All words are words of power. It's not that only mantras are mantras. From their perspectives, all words are words of power. But mantras are more so because they are used specifically to get you to this realm of spirituality. When we use usually words, we are not trying to get to samadhi or something. We just want to be understood by our peers or the ones who listen to us. But for sure, again, like I said, the words have power in themselves, because like we spoke about, they have this Prakasa, vimarsa, maya, this power of consciousness and self-awareness embedded in them from the paravak. And for this reason, when someone listens to what we say, their mind creates a reality. even if they don't want this, that reality appear in their consciousness. So again, when I say apple, somewhere in our mind an apple is manifested. Sure, the apple that I speak about is not the apple in your minds, but sure, it's created from what? From this light of consciousness that use the experience that we have with various apples, because for sure the apple in your mind is the apple that you like or dislike. It's an apple with which you have a relationship, emotional relationship. It's not just an image. Again, it's a creation. It's like a object. It's not just an image, because usually we think, oh, it's just like a picture in my mind. When I speak about an apple, it's just a picture in my mind when I think about an apple. But it's not like this. In our minds is the reality of an apple. It has a taste. If we think about it, it has a texture that we can think about it. It has knowledge associated with it, how we taste a lot of apples, the apple pies, the apple juice, and all the things are in that complex object. It's not just an image, it's not just a picture in our mind, it's an actual object, and maybe it's a more complex object than the real apple that we speak about. It's more complex because it has all the knowledge associated with it, our experiences and such. So every time we hear something, that reality become present in our mind. Sure, like in this meeting, when we speak some abstract things, it's harder to be aware of those realities that are created in our consciousness, in our mind, when mostly I speak about things. But for sure, if we are a bit aware or more attentive to what is happening inside of us when we hear these things, we will start that to understand that there is something there. It's not just I hear words and they are like in a computer transcribed in our memory and this is it. It's actually changing something in us. We feel that there is an understanding. There is sometimes, I don't know, when we hear about consciousness, we think about our experience with meditation and the experience that we have about consciousness. We try to understand the concept by relating with our experiences in meditation and such. For this reason, appear in us a kind of state of mind of inner experience. It's not just transcribing words. So for this reason, speech and speaking has a power over us, even if we want it or not. And when we hear angry words and ugly words, for sure in us something is happening. And if we are on that level, we become angry and upset. If we are not, we are contracted because we don't like that kind of speech. We react to words. We are not just hearing them and remain unaffected. So speaking has this power over us. And it's better to understand it and become more aware of it so that we can use more conscious and more responsible the way in which we speak. For this reason, in all spiritual traditions, there is this necessity to be more pure in your speech and sure in your thoughts, because thoughts are those madhyama level, that middle level in which speech has this kind of dual power. So getting back to mantras, mantras are seen as vehicles for these energies of consciousness. So we will use today Om. It's a very known mantra, and it's present in all the spiritual traditions of India and Buddhism. Om, it's all present. And if you read Yoga Sutras, you saw that Om is seen there as the word that calls upon God. It's, in some translation, is the name of the God. So when you utter Om, you actually call upon the presence of God. But sure, in Buddhism has other signification, because they don't have faith in a God. But regardless, Om has this power over consciousness, and it is used again in various traditions. In the way in which in yoga and in Shaivism a mantra is used, it has different levels depending on the level of the yogi. So usually they do this japa. Japa means repetition. So you just repeat that mantra again and again and again and again. Usually you will use this kind of malas. Mala, it's like instrument. This one, it's Rudraksha made. It's traditional in India. Rudraksha, it's a seed of a tree, which is very hard, and they use these malas to keep track of the number of times you utter a mantra. So sure, they have a lot of rules on how to do. There is this kind of different kind of bead, which is called meru, and when you number the utterance of Om, you will not cross this meru. You just turn around the mala and start over. It's a lot of things, and they regard this mala as an instrument, a spiritual instrument. So you have to be attentive with it, not to throw it on the ground, keep it in a good place and such. They usually make a mala specific for sadhana. So they made the mala at the start of sadhana and use various rules. But also they use the hand. This is called Karana Mala, which is using the hand, and they number the phalanges of the fingers. So usually they number the tip of the finger, the first phalange and the second. So we have 4 fingers and we number them with the big thumb, with the thumb. So we have 12 touchings, and with the other hand we keep track of the number of the hands we do. So why I explain you, a mala has 108 beads, which is 3 times 36. 36 are the tattvas, or so they are 3 times 36. So if you will use the hand because you don't have a mala, 12 it's a hand, so 3 times a hand it's 36, so 1 finger is 36. 3 fingers it's a mala. So to understand how the numbering works when you use the hands. There are some studies that shown that using the hands it's beneficial for the brain, because associating the uttering of mantra with the touching, it's creating like a process that helps the brain to be more healthy. It's not, I don't think it's a very scientific, it's on the fringe science, so they studied, but not like using the best of the best methods. But the way that they studied shown improvement in the power of concentration and memory and such. Now, using a mantra, it's done on different levels. The first level is just saying the mantra, like we will use Om because it's a well-known mantra. So we just say Om, Om, Om. There are 3 letters in Om. It's A, U, and the final, it's spelled usually M, but it's a nasalization at the end of Yud. So it's Om. It's like a vibration in which the vowels dissolves. In the Sanskrit alphabet, it's an M with a point under it in Latin transliteration, because actually in the Sanskrit alphabet is just a point. It's called Anusvara. So it's just a point. And when a mantra has that point, it means that is this nasalization at the end. Why it's important? Because the sound dissolves in the silence. So when you say Om, that M, that nasalization dissolves in silence. So you will not say Om, 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 like this. Sure, in Tibet and such, you can see sometimes monks or lay people just saying Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme. It's just for them it's important the quantity and not the quality of the way in which you speak the mantra. But if you want to have all the benefits, you have to utter the mantra with this awareness and with this reverence, because it's the word that calls God upon, calls Ishvara. So when you say Om, you say it with this reverence, and you use that intention, that bhavana. If you remember, when we spoke about bhavana, we spoke about this kind of thing that is not enough to just utter the mantra, but you have to have that intention. That intention is more important when you say a mantra because it connects you to that higher level of speech, to Pashyanti. Like we spoke, Pashyanti is that level of desire, of intention, of entering undifferentiation, in which the word is not actual a word, but is more like an energy. So this is the starting point, saying out loud a mantra. Sure, you can say it with loud voice, or you can just whisper it, like Om with whisper voice, but you have to utter it, to actually speak the mantra. And this is the first level. Usually after you say it for a while in this way, speaking it, you get to the next part, which is the Madhyama level, in which you continue to say it, but in your mind. And when you say it in your mind, when you say the mantra in your mind, it's more like the middle ground between the actual letters, sounds, and the energy that mantra conveys. So in this level of Madhyama, you start to hear like a sound that is like the essence of the mantra. It's not like a sound that you hear outside, because it's an inner sound. And this inner sound that is associated with that specific mantra starts to be in the same time with the actual mental uttering of the mantra. So you continue to say in your mind Om, 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 but again, not Om, 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 and let the M, the nasalization, dissolve in the silence, in the inner silence. But in your mind, that inner silence is actually that inner sound. And you saw that Sahaja in the last years included in the retreat some lessons about nada. Nada is this inner sound of consciousness. And when we start to hear that inner sound in this intermediate level of Madhyama, we actually start to hear this inner nada, which usually is called anahata nada, the sound that has no reason, that has no cause. Is just the sound of your consciousness, but it's modulated by the mantra. And after a while, you will start to feel the need to stop uttering in your mind the mantra and just listen to this sound, which again is corresponding, it's in a way similar to that mantra. It's like all the sounds are combined in all the letters, or all the sounds of the letters of the mantra are combined in a single sound. And when we start to be aware just about this sound, this inner sound, we get to the Pasyanti level, to undifferentiated level, because in this level we don't have individual letters that compose a word. It's just this energy manifested as inner sound. And sure, if we continue on this path, we get to this nada, which is actually the level of paravak, of the supreme level, in which all mantras and all energies are combined. So you see, the mantra gets you from the spoken level to this paravak. Someone asked if Om and so if Aum and Om are the same, and they are the same because in Western languages, in European languages, we usually don't have a special letter that is Om, A-U. But in Sanskrit language, there is a letter which is A-U. It's a diphthong. I don't know exactly if this is the word, but it's a diphthong. So they have a letter that it's A-U. But usually it's translated in European language as O. And for this reason, you will see Om instead of Om. It's pronounced very, very close one to another. So for this reason, usually they just say Om. But if you are paying attention, it's an A-U which becomes like an O. I hope it's clear. So for sure, there is a mantra which is spelled actually O-M, O-M with point, for sure, because again, it's not an M, it's a nasalization. M, it's a different letter. So for this reason, it's a bit hard to explain mantras, because we just take them and use them as we usually use words, but we don't keep these rules from the Sanskrit, and it's a bit of a problem here. And sure, when they describe this mantra, usually they speak about three parts: A, U, and M. Each of them has the signification. One is Jagrat, because we spoke about it last time of the Avashtas. So one is Jagrat, one is Vapna, one is Shushupti. So one is the awakeness, one is the dream state, and one is the deep sleep state. So they spoke about them like different parts. For this reason, we usually try to say like Om, separating three phases of the uttering of Om. There is some other techniques like Uchara, which means the rising of this Om in different stages, but we will not get to that kind of practice. We will just try to do it like this, simple. Starting with loud voice for a while. I save like 5 to 10 minutes. Then we get to the mental utterance. We say in our minds, we continue to say Om, Om. But even if we say it in our mind, we try to hear that inner sound. So for a while we'll be uttering in our mind and trying to hear the inner sound. If we start to hear that inner sound, we can stop uttering in our mind Om and focus just on the sound. And let that sound to dissolve our minds and get us to that non-differentiation, to that level of paravak, of supreme word, of Prakasa, vimarsa, Maya, of that consciousness and self-awareness, light of consciousness and self-awareness. Sure, not everybody hear that sound, or more correctly, don't identify the sound with the nada, because that sound, it's more like the sound of silence. When you are in a complete silence, it's like your ears start to ring, like I don't know how to call it. It's like your ears start to ring, but it's not in your ears, it's in your, more like in your heart or in your mind. You don't hear them actually with your ears. The closest phenomenon with this is tinnitus, is that sound in your ears which is very intense. It's like very intense. But inside, when you hear this nada, it's more like a pleasant sound. It's not you will not feel it like something disturbing or problematic. Sure, if you are not used to it, it can be like something annoying at first, because it's the sound of silence, and some people are not used with the inner silence. They have thoughts and they have songs and they have speeches in their minds, and that is actually seen as a noise compared to this inner sound. But when you start to it's more like feeling that sound, not hearing that sound, to be more precise, then you can stop altogether saying the mantra and just remain with that sound. And this process is also called in Hatha Yoga Pradipika, for example, it's called the laya. Laya are various techniques to dissolve the mind, and usually this listening to the inner sound is the best method to dissolve the mind. But sure, you first have to hear it. And from my experience and other friends' experience, when you utter the sound with loud voice and then you utter it in your mind, usually the sound appears and it's very powerful. If you have questions about this practice before we start it. So, each of you will, I hope you are alone, and or if you are not alone, the ones with you are not disturbed by you saying Om with loud voice, but say this mantra with loud voice, and I will just tell you when to change to the mental uttering, and then when to try to stop the mental uttering and just be aware of the sound. So in this way we try to be together in this practice. I will stop my microphone when I will speak the mantra, so I will not disturb your uttering of the mantra. On the recording, sure, it will be recorded on my on the recording that will be available, just to know. But here you will remain with your own sounds. So for this, we get in a good position for meditation with the back straight, shoulders a little to the back, opening the chest, creating an openness in our heart, in our minds. We center our awareness in the middle of the chest, a little to the right, that place that we point to when we say I. And from there we try to fill everything with love. And keeping this awareness of the heart, we will start to do japa using Om. We will say again and again Om, Om, dissolving the sound in the silence and keeping the meaning of the mantra, which is the name of God, the way in which we call upon God, Ishvara, like it's said in Yoga Sutras. We keep this intention to get in touch with the Supreme Consciousness, the light of awareness and the self-awareness. Om. We continue now with the mental voice. We utter the mantra in our mind and try to become aware of the inner sound. We continue in the same rhythm that we had when we spoke the mantra, dissolving the inner mantra in the inner silence, in the inner sound of silence. We keep that bhavana, that meaning of the mantra, which is the name of Ishvara, calling the presence of the Supreme Consciousness, that Prakasa vimarsa maya, the light and the self-awareness. you started to hear the sound, now you can stop saying the mantra in your mind and just listen to the sound. But if the sound starts to disappear, you can say again the mantra, calling upon the sound. Let the mind dissolve in this anahata nada, this inner sound of consciousness. We get in this way to this visionary level of the word, the pure intention in which the words are energies undifferentiated. And from there, when the mind is dissolved, we are just pure awareness, pure consciousness and bliss, Chidananda, at the level of Paravak, the Supreme Word. We feel this inner sound in our heart. It's called Anahata Nada, the sound without cause. The sound of silence, the sound of awareness, of consciousness. We feel that the source of this inner sound, it's actually our heart. And keeping this awareness of the heart, we slowly get back, opening our eyes, keeping this background of the inner sound. So, if you have questions about what we spoke about today,
Yes, I have a question.
da,
Uh, about the we could associate the phases of the uttering with the breath, because except obviously it's not it's quite difficult to to exhale when you speak loudly, but when you are in the madhyama vak, we could use both exhaling or inhaling phase. So, what do you recommend?
when you speak the mantra in your mind, you can forget about breathing.
Okay.
Because if you are relaxed and centered in your heart, the breathing becomes superficial, and you can just ignore the breathing. It's just in the background and you can just ignore it. But if the breathing, it's obvious, and you cannot ignore it, then sure, you can use it either way. It doesn't matter really.
For example, intuitively, I use it the breath. Actually, when I utter in the mantra, exhale, and on the pause, I was aware about the dissolving the sound on the pause, and then again exhaling and uttering the sound in the same time, and on the pause, uh, aware of about dissolving the sound.
Yes, but it's better not to make it too 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 much technical, too much focused on the details of this, because it's important to get your focus from the mantra to the sound.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remain too much in the details, when I exhale, now I want to feel the dissolving, it's keeping you in the technique, in the
Okay.
method, and don't let you to translate to that sound of silence. For sure, when you use a mala, it's easier because you have this kind of practice that you do a mala with loud voice, or two malas or three malas with loud voice. Then you do a mala or two or three with your mind, and then you just put your mala around your neck and focus on the sound. It's easier when you use a mala because you have very clear boundaries. For now, I just say the mantra out loud. Then for another mala, I say it in my mind, and then I just focus on the sound and just uttering from time to time the mantra. But uh, from my experience, it's better not to focus too much on the details, but more on the awareness and the feel, the way in which mantra feels inside you. And for sure, it's necessary to keep that meaning in your mind, because it's very important. It's not just a string of sounds that you make, but it's, in the case of Om, it's the word that names God. So it's very important, this kind of meaning. It's the name of consciousness. It's something very spiritual. So when you say the mantra, it's about being aware of this, and in this way you lose the details of the practice, the
Yes, what I was feeling was about when I exhale, the sound was amplifying.
When you did that with in your mind.
In my mind, in my
Yes, because we usually associate exhaling with manifesting, with getting out something.
yes,
So
yes,
yes, but you will see at some point you lose this awareness of the breathing, because you are more focused on the sound and on the awareness that that sound brings, and you detach yourself from the body and from the functions of the body. It remains somewhere in the background.
So,
But sure, at first, if the mind needs this, because usually the mind needs a focus point and needs to be kept in the
beginning
yes
stage, in the beginning stage, yeah,
yes
yeah, we could use it. It's helping us.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And the last phase, after I'm focusing on the sound dissolving and remaining the background sound, or we try to get off the sound, remaining only silent, or
Actually, this is the sound of silence. So it's like your mind dissolves in this vibration, because we will speak next week about spanda, but actually this vibration is the tremor of the heart. So it will not disappear.
okay.
It becomes the sole reality, is the only reality. This we call it sound because we is the way in which our mind understand vibration. So
Okay.
our mind translate the spanda, the tremor of the heart, in the way of sound, but it's the sound of silence. So it's a sound, but it's a silence. It's a paradoxical thing.
Okay, thank you.
So if you have other questions.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Is it normal to experience twitching in the body when the naga appears? I felt some pretty strong twitching in the neck area, and if I lay down, I felt more in my leg, like a leg twitching. Is this like a normal phenomena that occurs in pastas, or something to be concerned about?
I don't know really. I didn't experience this kind of twitching, but sure, sometimes appear from various reasons. It can appear when you relax, and when you relax, because your mind becomes more quiet, and some kind of tension it's released from your body, then can appear this kind of twitching. It can have various reasons, and for sure you don't have to worry the first time. if you repeat and all the times when you try to do this kind of twitching appear, then you maybe have to ask yourself more questions. But if it's just an occurrence now and next time will be lesser or doesn't appear, it's just about this moment for you. Because I don't know, I didn't experience this kind of twitching. It's like, can you explain more?
Sure, it's actually quite violent sometimes, and it is more of the reoccurring. And it does actually, interestingly, maybe the neck will go like very strong to a side.
Okay.
Maybe one side, maybe another side. So.
And it appears in all kind of meditations, or when you do with a mantra?
All kinds of meditations.
Okay.
I will ask myself more questions then.
Yes, you have to be more present in the moment in which that twitching appeared, to be more aware of what is causing it, because again, can be various things. I don't have much experience, but usually when for me appear, it's correlated with some kind of relaxation, and appear, for example, when I go to sleep and I am, I don't know, very tired or something, then my hand twitch or my leg twitch, and this is the only kind of experience with twitching I have. So from this perspective, can be just a way in which your nervous systems release tension. And usually meditation, it's a way to release tension, even if we are not aware that we have some reason to be tensed about, you know. And it continues to happen if you meditate, I don't know, 2 hours. 2 hours you will twitch?
I don't think so.
Then it's just about relaxation. If it's happened 2 hours straight of twitching, then it's a problem. then it's a problem. But if it's just at the beginning or from time to time, then it's not a actual problem that you have to worry about. Because yes, even if we stay in meditation, because the meditation can be associated with some kind of inner tension. We want to get to the good parts of meditation, and for this reason we tense ourselves inside to get rid of the thoughts and focus on the heart, or and this kind of approach to meditation creates an inner tension, and we start to feel it in our necks, in our backs, and sometimes we have to just move a little to release that tension, that it's because our mind is so focused on getting results. And for us as Westerners, we are very focused on results. I want to have that experience, and for this I will work very hard, and this creates tension in the body, and yes, it can be released when we release our grasp on the body. That tension can be released with this kind of twitching or other ways.
Thank you.
So if there are no more questions, see you next week.